Hello, and thank you so much for the invitation. I'm thrilled and very grateful for having the opportunity to be with you today. The topic that I want to talk to you about today is pretty complicated, and each portion thereof probably merits its own separate presentation. But I have chosen some issues and approaches that I think are especially worth while. So. From the point of view of aging of the population, I think it's very interesting and useful to first take a look at what's happening in the world. According to the World Bank, we have moved as a world, as humanity, from the fertility rate, so births per woman, at 4.7 in 1960 to 2.3 in 2022. So 2.3 is of course just below the magical replacement level, which is 2.1 of course. As a planet, we are like at this point as a planet, as humanity, we can say, and the trend is going down. So aging is something not only which is happening in Western Europe, North America, rich countries. This is a global trend that is gaining in intensity. So we're thinking from our perspective, perspective of a country that is already aging. But if we take a look at Niger, so Niger is one of the countries that has the highest fertility rates in the world. But even here, we can say a sharp drop. So we moved from 7.1 to 6.7. So 6.7 is still very high, but the trend is very, let's say, clear, and it's gaining speed. So even in the states which have very high fertility, the trend is pretty clear. To take another perspective, so if you look at the fertility rate in the world as of 2023, so the red color represents low fertilities, well below replacement level, especially deep red. Blue and especially dark blue, these are regions with high fertility. So how this is connected to aging? Well, low fertility means that there are fewer young people, right? Fewer young people, that means that the portion of the population that's old or older is becoming larger as opposed to the part of population that is young. So as you can see, most of the world is red, with some notable exceptions, especially sub-Saharan Africa. But it's important to note that even in sub-Saharan Africa, the fertility rates are dropping, and they're dropping pretty fast. So these regions will be becoming red in the future. Another perspective. So here we can is the size of the bubble. The size of the bubble represents how big is the population of a given country, and on the vertical axis we have the fertility rate, and this dotted line is the replacement rate. So so here you can see that over half of the world's countries, which represent 2/3 of global population, already have fertility rates below 2.1. So human population is either aging or will be getting older quite soon. So there are notable exceptions like Nigeria or Democratic Republic of Congo, but in these countries also there is this tendency to drop. What does it mean? This means that not only in Europe, not only in, let's say, United States or Japan, if there is no action, if something does not change very significantly. Populations will age, they will age significantly, and then they will decline, because the natural consequence of aging is well, as we age, at a certain point we unfortunately die. So this means that the population will be the population will be first getting older and then shrink. This also means that with time, migration pressures are likely to decrease, and it might be even difficult to find migrants, because the countries that are source of migration, they are very likely to start to age. It will take time, of course, but this is the direction that we are heading to. So what are the consequences? So first, there are many consequences to aging of populations, but first one that I want to turn your attention to is strains on the pension system. So if we have smaller portion of the population that's professionally active, and larger portion of the population retires and gets pensions, so we have smaller tax base to fund the pension system and higher pensions. So the pension system is under strain. Another issue that we are already talking about today are strains on the healthcare system. So older people need more healthcare services. If the portion of the population that is older or retired is bigger, then we have smaller labor force, smaller tax base, smaller state revenues, and higher expenses. So strains on the healthcare systems. Also, slower economic growth. Shrinking labor force means that the economic growth will be slower. Lower rates of innovation are also very likely. So if we have a small number, relatively shrinking number of people that can contribute to innovations, also lower numbers of exceptional people, because like every now and then there is an exceptional person in the population. If the population is smaller, the likelihood of someone really brilliant is also lower. So lower innovation, and finally increases in public deficits and debt. So we will have higher expenses and lower revenues. So another consequence of that will be deficit, debt, borrowing, and in many countries the situation is already not very good in terms of public deficits and public debt, and aging will contribute to that. So all of that will translate into pressure to raise the retirement age. So there will be growing pressure to raise retirement age to try to mitigate these issues. So if people will retire later on, they will get their pensions later, so that will ease up the pension systems a little. If they will be working longer into their life, they will pay taxes to create GDP. There will be more money in the system also for the healthcare. Economic growth will not be slowed down as much because there will be larger labor force, and this is also translated into debt and deficit. So these pressures to raise the retirement age, they will be increasing as the population age. As of 2022, the normal retirement age in OECD was 63.6 years for women and 64.4 for men. And this is expected to rise. And for people who entered the labor market at the age of 22 in 2002, in the OECD countries, this will be expected to be 66.3 years for men and 65.8 for women. In other words, the retirement age is being increased in OECD countries, and this trend seems to be a stable one. Oh, sorry, I'm supposed to be here. Okay, yeah. So it's also interesting to note that according to OECD, working age population is a share of population between 50 to 64 years old. So we can see that already the average retirement age in 2022 for men was higher than what OECD considers to be a working age population. And so this is a problem because we are expecting older people to work longer, and from the point of view of natural consequences of aging, it may be challenging for them. So expectations for older people to work longer, which are derived from circumstances that are very difficult to change. But older age is naturally connected to lowering of natural capabilities, so it's difficult to work as hard, as long, etc. But also, as people age, it becomes usually more difficult for them to adapt to changing circumstances. And the rapid digitalization of the economy makes these circumstances very dynamic, and because of these rapid changes in the economy, which are due to a large degree to digitalization, there are extra challenges for older people. So, as we age, our natural capabilities decrease, but with time we accrue experience, we accrue skills that we can rely on. But as the economic reality changes, it may be more and more difficult to use these skills and experience, while we are becoming less adaptive to changing circumstances. To give you, let's say, maybe not very scientific, but real life example. I know personally some very brilliant lawyers who are over 60, and it's difficult for them to use Word, right? So they're struggling with it. And it becomes more and more prevalent. It's more and more prevalent, but by that I mean that the rate of change, how we work, how we function in the labor market, this is changing faster and faster, and it may be difficult for older people to keep up with the changes. So, in other words, older persons will be expected to work longer as they are older, and at the same time they will be expected to compete on the labor market with younger persons in the economy that's changing at increasingly fast pace. So there is a paradox, right? So on the one hand, you need to work longer, but on the other hand, the circumstances are becoming more and more difficult, let's say, for older people to stay professionally active later into their lives. And data seems to support that. So it seems that the age between 25 to 49 is the best age to be in when looking for work. But after 50, it becomes more and more difficult. So higher retirement age. It was said at the previous panel that economic deprivation may lead to social exclusion. So this hiring of the retirement age will affect a lot of older people in a adverse way, especially as the reality around them changes at an ever fasting, increasing pace. So this brings us to social justice. So social justice is very difficult to define. There are multiple definitions. One definition of social justice is the meritocratic approach. So each person should be able to benefit from his or her work and talents. There is an egalitarian approach which goes into the opposite direction. That there should be some equalization, limiting of the differences in status of persons because connected to their talents or ability to work. There is a moral approach to social justice, which so in this context, social justice is the notion of social justice is basically fueled by society's values. So social justice as a reflection of society's values, distributive approach, which argues for equal distribution of income, wealth, unless unequal distribution is beneficial for all. And finally, a broad approach to social justice, that social justice demands a creation for a stable economic development, fiscal stability, the right of citizens and elected representatives to set social and economic policies via democratic procedures, social solidarity, and basic social security. And these are, of course, just few of different approaches to social justice. This notion is, of course, very, very broad, multidimensional. So there are different positions in the literature, different positions taken by different courts in different countries. So this is just, of course, this is a brief overview of this legal and scientific concept. So to bring it all together, or to make an attempt at bringing all of these issues together, we are getting old as societies. We are going to become more older and older as humanity. There are some ways to there are some ways to mitigate that via migration, which is a separate topic, a separate, very, very complicated topic. But as we know, migration is connected to its own set of very, very difficult challenges. So that's one thing. And another thing is that the global trends show us that even if someone will believe in migration very strongly, be super optimistic about migration, this will also end. So the sources of our migration, everything points to the direction that with time there will be no migrants. So this is also not a solution that's sustainable in the long run, even if we close our eyes to all the difficulties, controversies, and problems related to migrations, and let's agree there are plenty of them. So because of that, there will be a huge pressure, growing pressure, to raise the retirement age. So the older people will be forced to work longer and longer. And at the same time, the economic and labor environment will be changing at an ever-increasing pace. So the way we work, we create value, will be changing rapidly, and probably the space will be increasing. So with the development in artificial intelligence, right? So we can see how things change, and that people who are able to use these new tools and use them well will have an advantage over those who do not. And it's always easier for younger people to adapt these new tools because they are familiar with them from a young age, and it's more difficult to adapt as we get older. So if you ever seen a person who's 17 who uses a smartphone and a person who's 70 something who uses, the 70 plus, they use smartphones, but it's not the same way, right? There is no such ease and fluidity. So this will be very difficult on older persons. From the point, and this is pretty obvious from the point of view of people who are doing manual labor, where they are older, so physically they're using their capability, and then we tell them work longer, even though you're old, you have problems with your body because of hard labor. But even for people who do mental work, intellectual work, it will be more difficult for them as well, because the way mental work, intellectual work is being done will also change, and probably the rate will be increasing all the time. It will be very difficult to adapt and to compete. So, is it possible or likely that this retirement age won't go up? This is very unlikely. But from the point of view of justice, as let's say, controversial as the notion of social justice or justice in general may be, I think it's possible to say that it is not just to just force people to work longer in such difficult circumstances, and there should be some policies aimed at helping them, at least mitigating some of these problems. So one point could be privileges, tax privileges for older persons. So if we force people to work longer, let's at least ease their tax burden so that their economic situation is somehow less problematic. Another possibility, promotion of employment of seniors, older persons, including fiscal incentives. So by fiscal incentives, I mean that subsidizing companies which hire older persons and creating favorable conditions to hiring older persons. So fiscal incentives, this could be subsidies, this could also be tax privileges for enterprises that hire older persons. So there is of course in the details, but as a general policy direction, this is I think a sound proposal. Helping, so it was Professor already mentioned that, so helping older persons in accommodating to changing economic environment. So fund trainings and aimed at helping older persons to acquire skills that will help them to keep up. Also, there is some hope with automation of physical and mental labor. So automation means creates a possibility that smaller labor force can become much more productive, and this increased productivity may create high tax base. So we can have smaller number of persons, which will create enough state revenue to fund retirement, pension funds, pension system, healthcare, etc., etc. So there is some hope in that, but this hope shouldn't be overestimated. So this may help, but probably won't solve the problem. And finally, this is all of that is just patching up like the system. So this may help, but it won't solve the basic problem. And the basic problem is that we're not having kids. There are fewer and fewer kids on the planet, not only in Poland, not only in Central Europe, not only in European Union, everywhere. And without some kind of increase of fertility that will at least somehow partially mitigate this demographic crisis or even catastrophe that's already a regional problem, but it's likely to be a global problem. We may end up in a very bad place. And what I mean by a bad place, so in the previous panel there was the mention of euthanasia, right? So that means basically suicide, right? Like a nice suicide, like a suicide in pleasant conditions. So no, it's a very, let's say, nasty prognosis. But I think there will be increasing pressure to promote such policies, such legal institutions and culture, because all of these trends. And this is I think this is very like a bad situation to find ourselves in. So increasing fertility. The problem is that it's very difficult to point at successful policies in this regard. So who conducted successful policies that actually helped with fertility? Well, such policies probably exist, but is it possible to implement them, to convince people to implement them? This would require some huge cultural axiologic change, like at the bottom of society, and we know, I think all of us are aware of how difficult this is to accomplish. So this is what I wanted to share with you in terms of the number of issues that, well, let's say, come together in a problematic way, because it seems that, as a general conclusion, that if we really want to help older persons, we should have higher fertility. And this will translate into social, fiscal environment in which older people won't face very difficult circumstances. And if this does not happen, the general circumstances for older people will be increasingly difficult in terms of labor, in terms of pensions, in terms of healthcare, and in terms of culture, because there will be growing pressure to well, I'm not going to continue this train of thought, but because it's a scary one, but unfortunately it seems quite likely from my perspective. Thank you very much for your attention.